Hey guys, welcome to the Football Diary podcast. How are you doing? Brilliant weekend of football. I think we've just had. Headline of the week really is Leicester City winning their first ever FA Cup in what was a pretty tense cup final, I think, but so many highlights for so many different reasons. And for the city of Leicester, I mean, me and Dave are both from the Leicester area, and we can sort of vouch for how much it means to everybody in the city because we saw it firsthand with the Premier League win. But the FA Cup win was no less spectacular, I don't think. So let's start with you, Dave. What did you see in the game? What made it so special from Leicester fans' perspective? What was your take on it? Because it was a really, really sort of enthralling encounter to watch as a neutral, wasn't it?
Yeah, first of all, what an achievement,
Yeah.
Story really for Leicester City. And it sort of, I think it kind of took you back a little bit to 2016 and the way the celebrations kind of were celebrated. And the players themselves, you could see what it meant to them. So, congratulations to them on that note. I think in the city as well, being in the city, it felt like a World Cup or Euros, seeing all the Leicester flags. You obviously normally see all the England flags about, but yeah, I think in terms of the game itself, it was an engrossing encounter. It was an interesting one. It probably wasn't, it wasn't a classic FA Cup final by such mean, but it was always, it was always competitive, and both teams were trying to win the game. Okay, there wasn't goals galore or shots galore. I think that was Leicester's first shot on target they scored their goal with.
Yeah.
But in terms of the competitiveness and both teams wanting to win, it was you couldn't question the will to win. I think obviously Chelsea looked more threatening in the first half, especially. They had a couple of opportunities. I think they had missed. I think it was Azpilicueta just missed basically like an open goal. It was
it's like a glancing header, wasn't it?
3 millimeters away from making that 1-0, and you never know if Chelsea had got that one goal lead, it would have caused Leicester to open up a little bit. I think they had a good shape to them, and they knew how they wanted to play and how they thought they might win the game, and that was on the counter. And you kind of see that was in the forefront of their mind. But fair play to them. I think what kind of strikes me with Leicester at the moment as well is they've actually got good strength in depth. And you think about some of the players that they've actually been missing. They didn't even have Ricardo playing right back. They obviously had Castagna. And they're missing James Justin, who's been like their player of the season for me. Up to his injury, he was unbelievable at left back. Half United could do with someone like him. Going forward, obviously we've had Shaw this season, but I think he can play both fullback positions. You think about the strength in depth there. They're building a really good squad, and going forward, I think you've got to give Brendan Rodgers a lot of credit. They've had a few iffy results the last few weeks. Obviously, Newcastle being the most recent one, and now they're kind of placing the top four is a little bit under threat with the battle for top four, which is Chelsea and Leicester have only really got themselves to blame for that being close. They've just pulled back into it. But I think in terms of the game, I think how Leicester defended was brilliant. They were resilient. You could have looked at that part when Johnny Evans went off, and that could have been a turning point. We saw how things developed against Newcastle in his absence. So, I think Fofana had a brilliant game. I really like him as a player. I think it's going to take a big bid for him to get him out of the club at Leicester.
There was a few players who really turned up on the day, I think. And I think to see the spectacle of a cup final with fans in the stadium was brilliant as well. So I think for Leicester to win it in front of their fans, and there were so few of them there, 6,000, I think, but you wouldn't know it. The noise was incredible. And the goal that Youri Tielemans scored was just one of the finest cup final goals I've seen in my lifetime, that's for sure. It was absolutely fantastic. So I think all of that factored in, as well as the fact that Leicester have got this story, haven't they? This backstory of rags to riches, coming back up from League One, just escaping relegation from the Premier League, winning the Premier League, and obviously the heartbreaking story of their owners. And I think the owners being present in the stands was another sort of extra layer to this story, and just made the Leicester victory so much more I don't know, it was a special occasion. I think every fan felt it when Schmeichel was doing his post-match interview. There was a lot of emotion there, and you could just sort of feel that it meant a lot to the club. And they were talking about Chelsea as being the favourites, but do you know what? Looking at the league table, I would argue that Leicester were kind of more of a favourite than Chelsea, or at least on a par with each other. But the fact that they were winning their first FA Cup made it more of an underdog story for them. So many layers to it. They made it such a real event for the club, for the city, and for neutrals as well. It was an FA Cup final I think we needed as fans, and a real spectacle for those in the stadium, those lucky few that got to see sort of history being made as well. Myles, I'll go to you next, because from a Chelsea perspective, they were favourites. They're Champions League finalists. They're one of the most informed teams in Europe, but suddenly they're stuttering a little bit, aren't they? And the game was going their way for most of the first half. They looked strong. What happened to them? How did they come undone?
Chelsea are in good form on paper in terms of the results they get into, because obviously looked at how to set them up defensively really well, and that's kind of paid off for them a lot. But I think they're flattering to deceive a little bit due to their kind of lack of a clinical nature. They had 13 shots on goal, and only 3 of them are on target. Now, Kasper Schmeichel, to me, one of the most underrated goalkeepers in world football. He's absolutely brilliant. And we saw that firsthand in this game with a couple of outstanding saves. So you're going to need to put more than 3 shots at him if you want to beat him most of the time. And like Dave says, Fofana had a fantastic game. Leicester as a unit defended really well. So it's not enough. You need to be more clinical than that. Since the turn of the year, Chelsea have scored more than 2 goals in 3 games since in 2021. One was against Morecambe, and won 4-0. One was against Luton, and the other one was the Crystal Palace game where Havertz kind of took over. So that's not many goals when you think of a side that spent the amount of money they did on the likes of Pulisic, Havertz, Werner, and Ziyech. Plus they've got Mason Mount. Plus they've got Giroud. Plus Tammy Abraham can't get a sniff. Plus Hudson-Odoi. They've got a wealth of riches in attacking positions, but they're not scoring goals. And that leaves you susceptible to games like this where, Dave says Tielemans' shot was the first one they had on target. It was the only one they had on target. It was clinical enough. It's all he needed. If you can't be hitting the target with the kind of talent they've got, then that is going to be a worry. And they're looking at bringing a number 9 in the summer. There was talk of Aguero, but I can't see that. They're obviously interested in Haaland as well, maybe bringing Lukaku back as well. But the amount of money that will take with the form he's been in and the way that Inter are moving, I can't see that. So I think for Chelsea, it's a case of getting more consistent in front of goal. They've sorted their defence out really well in many ways, although I think he got the selection really wrong. They've obviously got a lot to consider at the moment, and this seemed a bit almost Guardiola-esque of, right, we're in a big game, let me make a plan that people aren't expecting. I know he likes Marcus Alonso, but a lot of Leicester's game was always going to be that counter-attack, running in behind. Now, if you've got Thiago Silva and Azpilicueta as 2 of your back 5, you need your fullbacks to be able to have that recovery pace. You've got Reece James, brilliant, but this game was crying for Ben Chilwell. I don't think there are many people that would give you their best 11 for Chelsea and Chilwell wouldn't be the starting left back. People are trying to decide whether he's worthy of a starting place for England at the moment. He's definitely Chelsea's best left back. He offers a lot going forward, but has that recovery pace when coming back that they probably could have used as well. And like you say, narrative central. He's going to be well up for that final against his old club. And he was. When he came on, you saw the impact he had and the goal that he scored, disallowed by the finest of margins. But you can only complain about that so much if you're not hitting the target more often. So I think I would have looked at the fact that they got, like Dave says, they're missing Justin, they're missing Pereira, their first choice fullbacks. So attack their fullbacks early. You've got the players to do it. Ziyech can cause problems. To me, Pulisic, he's one of the best dribblers of the ball that you see in the Premier League right now. And he's got pace. I'd have put him on Thomas and I'd have put him on Castagna and said, right, go for him. Challenge him down that wing and see him early in the game, not settle into it. As soon as you let that back line settle, They've got leaders there that will get them through the game. Kasper Schmeichel will command his defence well and keep them level-headed. If you give him a difficult first 5 minutes, that's harder to do. Pulisic's going to do that for you. Hudson-Odoi might do that for you. And as much as I actually do really like Timo Werner, I think he's getting quite bad press considering the output he's had. This game could have done with Tammy Abraham, to me. Maybe Giroud, but Tammy Abraham's movement, and I think he's a better finisher of the ball than Werner right now. I do. I saw it firsthand at Villa. You give him a chance. It might take him a couple, but if Chelsea are creating 13 chances and putting 3 on target, there's something wrong with your front man. And Tammy Abraham would be a bit more clinical there. So, I don't know. I think Tuchel's done really, really well at developing that squad. And Lampard's shortcomings were obviously defensively. And he's sorted that out. But now they're lacking going forward. And that seemed... If you'd said that at the start of the season, that Chelsea wouldn't be scoring more than a goal a game, I think everyone would have laughed at with the amount of money they spent. So... I do think Leicester did a very, very good job. I think they were really well organised. They were clearly up for it, and they've had a wonderful season in many ways. I think the good thing about them is it used to be Jamie Vardy, and they kind of have Riyad Mahrez as well, but they kind of had to rely on Vardy's going to get you the goals. They've got stars all over that pitch now, and people contribute at different times. And that helps you in a season. There was a period where Maddison was easily their most valuable player, and now you see where he is. There was a period where Iniacho was getting all the goals, and he didn't really turn up for the final. But there's Tielemans, and he'll step up and do the job. He's fantastic, by the way, and has been overlooked for too long, really. And I know he's still young, but there aren't many better centre midfielders than him in the Premier League right now. And Leicester, give him credit, a third in the league right now. But I think we could all say Tielemans could be at a bigger club than Leicester. You say that, outstanding. You
say that, but I mean, he's at a level now where he's potentially going to be playing Champions League football. He's won a piece of silverware, which was always the aim of moving to England, and he had a lot of teams interested in him at the time, and he chose Leicester for first of all the opportunity, and second because he could see the growth potential. So that is actually coming to fruition now. Yeah, and like you say, credit to Brendan Rodgers especially. I said when he was appointed, it was just a perfect match with ambition from him, ambition from the club, ambition from the owners of the club, and they are in sync perfectly, all three. And he's in the right place to succeed. I think this is just the start of a push for Leicester to become actual fixtures in this so-called Big Six, because they're there. The last few seasons, they've been rightly at the very top of the Premier League table. And you could argue that someone like Tottenham now are no longer part of that elite. And I think that's down to Brendan Rodgers and the way he's taken them from mid-table, I think it was, like 10th or 7th or somewhere in that sort of league below the top six, to actual very much right in the middle of Champions League places. They were unlucky last season, and this season they could do it quite easily. And Tielemans, I think, is in the right place for his development.
I think the thing with Tielemans as well is, obviously, he joined Leicester at a time where Tielemans has been talked about since he was 16, 17. Yeah. When he was playing in Belgium, people knew his name. He was fantastic. He went to Monaco, and Monaco were in a very weird moment when he joined. They obviously had the whole thing where they were sacking and hiring the same manager and over again in Jardel. And then Henri coming in. And he had that loan spell with Leicester at a time where he probably wasn't at the elite in Europe level, but Leicester are a good side. And it worked for him. He settled. And the feeling around that club is infectious. The title winning feeling is still there. Leicester are everyone's second team in England, it feels like. You look at that top of the table, and if you're not a fan of Man United, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Leicester are the team you want to do well, because it's a nice story. Tielemans obviously felt that vibe, and I'm glad that it's working out for him. I do think, though, he's the sort of players that shouldn't just be qualifying for a Champions League, which Leicester still might not, if we're honest, but should be challenging for league titles and pushing into further stages of the Champions League. I can't think of many teams that he doesn't walk into their centre mid right now, particularly in England.
You say that, but we talked about the state of Europe's elite, especially, and financially, I don't think many could afford his fee. I think he's valued at somewhere between sort of 50 and 70 million or something like that, which I think is modest for a player of his still unfounded potential. I mean, what is he, 24 or something? Yeah, he's got loads of years ahead of him. Yeah, but I think there's not many clubs that could lure him away from a club with like an air of positivity that they've got at Leicester City. It's a proper family of players from top to bottom. Where's he going to find that kind of room to sort of feel wanted and needed. He's disposable if he goes to any other club. And that's the thing. I think a lot of fans were looking on at Leicester City's victory and going, I want some of that for my team, especially when you saw the owner come down from the stands and join in the celebrations. That was just a fantastic moment to see. But Dave, would you ever envisage that happening at Manchester United, for example, where an owner is so beloved that he joins in the trophy celebration?
Well, I couldn't see it with his current owners now. You don't really see the Glazers at many games at all. It was always Ed Woodward, and he was the face. And obviously, speaking of United, they brought, I think it was their director of communications came out and gave an interview to Sky Sports this week, and basically he was basically thrown out, at City, to basically give all these excuses that, United are looking to do this through, fan-led review via government, etc. There's going to be more communication. It's going to be, back in. The owners do care about the club. What? Why should he have to come out and explain that? Why aren't the people from above,
That's the problem, yeah. The liaison between owners and fans just isn't there. They're not consulted on things like that, are they?
No, and the thing is that they're talking about these fan forums that apparently Joel Glazer's going to attend. Right, so to speak, when it's actually coming out and facing, the world, they won't do it because this,
But if they did, David, it'd be also forced and fabricated. There's no natural inclination to do that. Whereas with the family that own Leicester City, they are so ingrained into the community and they've done so much for the surrounding area, and they are almost the face of Leicester City at the moment. As much as Brendan Rodgers and Youri Tielemans are the star of the show on the pitch, the cameras pan to the owners so much more than they would in any other club. In any other club, if it was a cup final and it panned to their owners, it'd be for completely different reasons, let's face it.
It's something Rio Ferdinand mentioned when he was speaking on BT coverage. He was mentioning, obviously, you won't see any of the owners go onto the pitch and celebrate like it has. I think it's happened a couple of times. I think Roman Abramovich might have done it with Chelsea on a couple of occasions. But at least he's playing the game now and then. Fair play to him, and he's invested into the club, into the infrastructure, and it's just something that's foreign to Manchester United. It still doesn't happen, and I think it's something that Rio touched upon and mentioned. Obviously, there's owners that won't do this. I think that people, bigger in the bigger picture, with bigger names, have sort of been told to kind of hold back on the criticism of pushing the agenda of United and things like that. It seems like it because there's been a little bit more of a less of an uproar in the media at the moment. But obviously, Gary Neville's come out with what he has today in leading open letter to the government
for some reform.
Yeah, to provide a reform, and that's something that really need. I think that the more people that have such big profiles in the media and obviously in football, the more people we can get on board with that, the better, because it's going to apply pressure to the government. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'll get back to Chelsea and Leicester for a moment because we can easily talk about Man United and their shortcomings, couldn't we?
I find it really funny because letting people behind the curtain, we talked and we said, yeah, United, no point really talking about them this week. Yeah, a couple of losses, won't talk about them. But Dave still has his rants about the Glazers. We'll schedule that in the Leicester chat. That's fine. I think the Leicester owner, though, I think the other thing to remember, and obviously it goes without saying, but that club has meant so much to their owners for the longest time. And imagine how much more it means to your current owner when he's inherited it in such tragic circumstances too.
Absolutely.
I remember the title-winning season, everything the owners were doing for the fans. Just silly little things like you'd get to the ground and there'd be like a packet of crisps for you all celebrating Jamie Vardy's goal streak. So that's such a lovely touch. They've always been invested in the club and the fans. But for their current owner, the way that he's taken that club on now and what it must mean to him, his family and everything, you could see that isn't just about a business like it is for some owners. It's not even just about football anymore. Leicester is his family. And that's so wonderful. And I don't think you'd find anyone in football that would begrudge Leicester this win. For people like Vardy, who's played in every single round of the FA Cup, for people like Johnny Evans, who kind of cast off from Man United, was down at West Brom, and now he's back up at heights like that. Kasper Schmeichel, who has been heroic for Leicester in this. Where's Morgan coming on the pitch? Everyone there deserved that win. And at the heart of that was an owner. And that is lovely to be able to look at a club and go, yeah, like you said, Rodgers doing a great job. The players doing a great job. But this owner deserves this cup. And that's so wonderful. He's brought the city of Leicester and fans so much in his time there. Their first ever FA Cup win. That's amazing.
It's beautiful.
I'm so jealous of that. I would love to see Villa lift a trophy again. The last time we lifted a trophy, I was like 2. So what Leicester have developed in that time is incredible. And I am genuinely really happy for them.
I think
Go on, Dave.
I think the season ticket holders, I think they were sent a programme through in the post.
That's nice.
Wow, okay. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Nice.
Staying on you, Myles, actually, while we talk about Leicester, I want to know where you think they go next, because is this a pinnacle for them now? They've won a trophy. They're probably going to get top 4. Who knows? That might still not happen. But does Brendan Rodgers see this as a stepping stone anymore? Or is he right at home in a club that genuinely is going to compete at this level for the next few years?
I think the thing for Leicester is they're very fortunate that their model is working. They are one of those clubs that kind of break into a topper bracket and then their best players get picked off. But they're wealthy enough that when that happens, they get outstanding fees for them. The likes of Mahrez, Kante, Maguire, Chilwell, moving on. But for the money that they got, they've invested that so well that they are becoming sustainable as a successful club. It's not like when Monaco won the league a few seasons ago with Mbappe and Silva. They all went, and Monaco went like this for a while. Leicester have kind of found they've already got a replacement lined up for anyone that they need to. And this season, you've seen more and more players break through. Dave talks about James Justin. He's had an outstanding season. You could see him move on. But Leicester have already got another young fullback coming through. They're prepared, which is really nice. Do I think that they can kick on? That's the only issue. I don't think Rodgers sees it as a stepping stone or anything. Tottenham are supposedly interested in Rodgers. And historically, you would have thought, that's probably a move someone would make. He ain't really interested in that.
No.
Are an even bigger club than Leicester going to come in for Rodgers? I'm not sure that they would. Whether that's right or wrong is a different question. I think Rodgers is actually quite underrated these days. I couldn't stand him when he was at Liverpool. He was a gimmick. He's developed a lot as a coach. You can see his time at Celtic, where he went and won some stuff. All right, maybe in easier circumstances, but he's gone out, he's done his badges, he's equipped himself well, and then he's come into Leicester, and you can't deny what he's doing there. I just don't know where Leicester can go. They're not going to be challenging for the league next season. They're going to just look to solidify a European place. They may still not get Champions League football this year. Some of the players that they've relied on for a long time are coming towards the end of a cycle. How long is Vardy going to be at his level? He's stopped scoring goals recently as much. Maddison's had a bit of fallout every now and again. Harvey Barnes looks great, but he's had injuries. Pereira's had injuries. So there is a lot of work to do to sustain the top 4 even. And you can't deny that other clubs will try and kick back on again. Can you rely on Liverpool having the season they've had again next year? Probably not. Tuchel's going to have a full summer with Chelsea. Arsenal and Spurs probably won't be spending the kind of money to get them back up there, but you never know. Could. And then other clubs will begin to challenge. West Ham might be back about Everton, even Villa. You never know in this market. Clubs are going to push them.
Yeah.
Leicester's job is to sustain. And whether they can do that, I'll be really interested to see, because it's a challenge. They will.
It's whether they can hang on to the key parts of the machine that's made them where they are now, because Brendan Rodgers is one of the most important parts, I would say. And to be fair, like you touched on, his time at Celtic was always going to be successful. They were running away with it anyway. But I think he needed that to rebuild his confidence more than anything. He spent time with Liverpool in the Premier League. He hit some heights with them, but it all came crashing down quite suddenly. And he built up an unfair reputation as a bit of a bottle job, I think. And that was coming to become a thing again with Leicester City from last season. Hopefully he's kind of got rid of that now. But I think he's in demand. There was a time where Arsenal could have had him as their manager when Arsene Wenger left, and they didn't even look at him. And I'm stunned looking back that was the case, because aside from all the sort of extra layer of ego that he used to have, that's what made him so unlikable for Liverpool. It was all about him. Remember that? Yeah, it was David Brent. Do you remember the documentary they did and followed Liverpool around? He had a portrait of himself on his wall in his home. That was just a sign of kind of the guy he probably was back then. But I think he's kind of matured.
But look, I'll get moaned at for just Liverpool bashing, but that's what that club does to you. Look at everyone there with their fake teeth these days. Leicester built a club around their community, it feels like, a very fan involved. So Rodgers has to humble himself to be part of that community. At Liverpool, it's I'm here to be a superstar, and that backfires. So he's matured as a coach. He's still relatively young as a manager as well, and he definitely was at his time at Liverpool. So he's definitely grown and developed a lot in that time. I think the problem is it's not him that's going to get picked off. But for example, whether they're one place apart in the league or not, United, much bigger club than Leicester, and have shown with Maguire, if they want a player, they can get them from Leicester. How many of Leicester's starting 11 would you take at United right now? A lot.
The majority, I think. Yeah, I think they're
midfield.
Even their young centre backs, Soyuncu and Fofana, who are both kind of not really the finished article. I'd take them in a heartbeat as our centre backs at United at the minute.
You'd take those two.
I'd take Evans back. All three of them.
You'd take Ndidi. You'd take Tielemans. You'd take Harvey Barnes. You'd probably take Maddison, although it'd be hard for him to fit in with Bruno there. There's players of great quality there that a lot of top clubs, not just United, a lot of top clubs are going to be looking at players like that. And also, money does talk for the players. Yeah, they'll all love the community feel of Leicester and love the way that the club is run. But they've won a trophy now, and you do wonder whether that might be them going, could move on and make my money now, could move to Man City, or I could move to, I don't know, even Spurs and get paid a bit more than I do at Leicester. You'll see the same thing with Dortmund at the moment. They've just won a trophy. Yeah. So now Sancho's got a perfect excuse to leave. It's like, I've done my bit now, so I can kick on and go somewhere else. And I hope that's not the case with Leicester, because I'd like to see this team stay together.
I think there's weird similarities between both Dortmund and Leicester. They've got this model of recruiting brilliantly, selling on for fantastic value and getting so much money for them to then reinvest in players that are of the same caliber and potentially world beaters.
And not being scared to play young players.
That's it, yeah. And it'd be a shame to see them sort of start selling off their star players as a regular, because they're never going to reach the very top tier of any level of football if they keep doing that. That's the thing. They need to reinvest in things like salaries for them, change their structure slightly and bring them up to that sort of top tier. It's difficult to do, though.
The good thing is the owners are loaded, so they don't need to sell, and they've shown that. When Mahrez wanted to go, it took a while for him to go because they waited for the right fee. When Maguire wanted to go, again, it was, this is how much you're going to pay. If you don't, he ain't going, because we don't have to sell him. We've got the money. We don't need 50 million for Maguire. Give us 18, you can have him. It's great business. They've always said that they don't want to let more than one player a season go of that sort of ilk. So this summer, if someone comes in for Tielemans, maybe he will move on. But then you can rest assured that the rest of the squad will probably stay together, and they'll probably find someone who will step in well. They've done so well at that. And then you look at some of the business they've done. Selling Danny Drinkwater was a stroke of genius. So you never know.
30 million, yeah.
They are doing well. Well.
Zooming back in on Chelsea, Dave, if you can sort of do the same thing as Myles has just done with Leicester there, they're going into a Champions League final very soon. They've got another tie with Leicester coming up that will potentially decide who finishes third, potentially, because Liverpool are looking like they will just capitalise on whoever drops points. Where do Chelsea sit now for you? Have they been disrupted from their momentum? Are they still a fantastic team, the one that dismantled Real Madrid, for example, over 2 legs? Or are the wheels coming off very slightly ahead of facing City?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Myles was saying. There's still something missing in that team, and I think Timo Werner going forward, I would liken him a little bit how he plays and he runs those panels a little bit to how Rashford does at United. And the same with Rashford, he's not a natural finisher. And even though Timo Werner was scoring all these goals, in Germany, that it was a known fact that he actually wasn't somebody who was a natural striker. He does play sort of that inside forward role really well, and he does run those channels, and he finds those spaces. He's brilliant at doing that, but he's not somebody who's going to score you 30, 40 goals a season, in my opinion. And I think that's somewhere Chelsea need to invest in, and is in that striker position. And I think it's something they know. They know it, and Tuchel knows it. He's obviously spoken in the media about, I think on the back of when Werner missed a couple of golden opportunities against Real Madrid in that first leg, and he can't miss these chances. He needs to score because it's, and obviously thankfully it went for them in the second leg and it didn't matter, but he knows it himself. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go in the transfer window, because there's a lack of affordable top quality strikers up there. What do you do? Do you take a punt and risk it on an upcoming prodigy? There's a couple that are out there, but not too many. So I think it's going to take big money to get somebody in who's proven and going to bang in 30, 40 goals a year. But I think it's probably something they'll try and do. I think they probably might go for Lewandowski or somebody of that ilk.
What about short term though? What about ahead of the Champions League final? Does that make it a different game? This
next game must win for Chelsea. If they draw or lose that game against Leicester, then it's not in their hands. They need to beat Leicester, and if they don't do that, they then need to beat Man City because they need to get in the Champions League next year. So it's 2 must-win games for them, really. All you got to do is focus on the next game. That's all they can do at the minute. Is they've got to win. They've got to beat Leicester somehow. I agree with Myles. I think it was a bit of a strange decision to play Alonso against Leicester. I just felt like as though he doesn't really provide that impetus that Chilwell does, and he actually kind of pins back your fullbacks, and it's something that I felt like Leicester dealt with it a little bit too easily. Going forward, and for much of the first half, in the second half they were well on top, obviously, until they scored that goal. And as soon as they scored that goal, Chelsea knew they kind of had to go for it, and it did pin Leicester back. So I think, it's an interesting situation. It's an interesting night tomorrow. See how it all plays out. I think we'll all be tuning into that.
Yeah, I think it's weird because this situation has now put Man City in the driving seat for the Champions League final massively. They'll be licking their lips at the prospect of facing this Chelsea team now. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, it was looking like, we even said it ourselves, Chelsea are going to be difficult to beat. And Leicester have proved that, if they stick together and play to a very nice sort of strict game plan, which Man City invariably do on these occasions, then they've got a damn good chance of beating them. So I think Man City are now firm favourites for the Champions League after the way Chelsea have become a little bit unravelled in recent games. But then also Liverpool are looking at this game on Tuesday and saying, do you know what? Someone's going to drop points somewhere. This is us back in the top 4 race, well and truly, because if they win all their games now, they're in the Champions League, aren't they? Let's face it. But I'm going to then go to you again, Myles, and talk about how Liverpool have got back into top 4 contention. I can see you look thrilled at the prospect of talking about Liverpool, but come on, credit where it's due. Last minute headed winner from Alisson, a goalkeeper, let's not forget. That should be headline news any other weekend. Leicester have taken that, but let's talk about their comeback against the mighty West Brom, first of all. Bit of shade there as well.
Credit where credit's due to Alisson, definitely. Brilliant header. Really good header. Obviously, he's unmarked because who thinks to pick up the goalkeeper in the area? But he still has a lot to do. It's a really good header. He's placed it brilliantly. So, yeah, fair play. Very, very good goal. I wonder whether Trent aimed for him almost and thought, all right, I trust him enough. He's in space. Let me find the empty man. They were fortunate. They were very, very fortunate. I mean, any team that goes 1-0 down to a Hal Robson-Kanu goal in 2021 has got to ask themselves some questions. And they should have been 2-1 down. I think it's a really harsh decision to rule out that second West Brom goal. The player is stood in front of Alisson, but there's about 5 yards worth of space between them, maybe a little less than that. It's harsh. if it's given against you, you gut it. And if you aren't a Liverpool fan, that decision was given against everyone in football the other day. They're back in it, and well, they definitely are. It's in their hands now because Leicester and Chelsea can't get maximum points, so they can catch one of them if they win all their games. And I really thought when I saw 1-0 Hal Robson-Kanu after 5 minutes, you thought, hello, brilliant. We can all really enjoy this weekend now. So yeah, it does take a lot to bounce back and get the result when you do go behind. But what are West Brom playing for? If you want to get back into the Champions League, if you want a spot in Europe, you have to win that game. A relegated West Bromwich Albion have nothing to play for. It's not like when Chelsea lost to them and they were fighting for their lives. There was no reason to not win that game. And the quality that Liverpool have got should have come through. So, yeah, they won. They've still got 2 more games that they've got to win. You'd imagine they would. They're favourable, so they probably will get back in the top 4. Is that all their own doing? They've obviously had to work hard. They've picked up points where they were losing points earlier in the season. So they've definitely improved their form. They're very fortunate that Leicester and Chelsea have dropped off. People wouldn't have expected Leicester to lose to Newcastle. People probably wouldn't have expected Chelsea to lose to Arsenal last week. So those things have opened doors for them. You've got to walk through those doors, and Alisson did it. And do you know what? I make no secret of the fact I can't stand Liverpool, or many people associate with the club. But Alisson did come across really, really well. The way he spoke afterwards, he was incredibly humble about it. And obviously he's had a lot to contend with this season personally as well. And he spoke really well about that and what it meant for him and how it represented a lot for his family. And that was really nice to see too. So fair play to him. A goalkeeper scoring is always quite exciting, no matter what club it's for. And it was a very good quality goal.
Great technique as well. Yeah, it was. I think the story of Liverpool during the West Brom game was kind of typical of their form this season. They had, I think, 26 shots on goal. Not on goal, sorry. 26 shots full stop, but only 6 of them were on target. And their front line is just not firing at all at the minute this season.
What's happened to Mane?
It's mad. Mane is a different player. To be fair, Salah's goal was really well taken. And he played really well. And he was the one creating the chances, but Mane is just not the player he was last season. So
And Jota's out now. Jota's not going to play again this season. So
is the last 2 games a given?
Mane will go in the summer, I think, if they can get an offer, because he doesn't look happy either.
I think they need to sell him for the money. He's still a valuable asset, isn't he?
Yeah. Him and Klopp had that odd interchange the other day. Liverpool will definitely want to freshen up in the market. He's not had the best season, so maybe now is the time to cash in on him as well. I really like Mane normally. I think he's a really, really good player, but he missed a sitter the other day, and that's not the typical Mane that anyone would come to expect of the last couple of years, particularly at his time at Liverpool. So
no, it was a weird game to be scoring a last-minute winner in, or needing a last-minute winner in, especially from a goalkeeper, because like you said, West Brom are dead and buried. And if Hal Robson-Kanu's scoring an opening goal against them, then that's concerning, because he's not played football for so long. So Liverpool, it's in their hands. They've got a couple of games that are quite favourable compared to the rest of the running. But Dave, is it now advantage Liverpool going into this last couple of games? Are they kind of the favourites to claim that top 4 spot now ahead of Leicester and Chelsea?
I'm going to say that they're definitely going to get Champions League, and they won't have any trouble against Burnley or Crystal Palace in June.
Okay, that's it. Pod over.
I mean, obviously they lost the first game. They lost against Anfield. At Anfield, sorry, it was against Burnley, wasn't it? Earlier in the season, they lost 2-0. And you know, it could be Istanbul all over again. So you don't know. I mean, you would expect it to be fairly straightforward for them if they're on the game. But if it's the team that ends up how they did against West Brom, they could make it hard for them. It's going to be pressure on. It could be pressure on until the very last game of the season.
Well, I think Burnley are just the type of really ruffle some feathers here. Let's really stick it to them and upset what everyone thinks is a given, because everyone thinks Burnley are going to get soundly beaten by Liverpool, because they're pretty much done for the season, aren't they? They've got nothing to play for except ruffling a few feathers, and I think that's right up this Burnley team street. So fingers crossed. That's the way I'm seeing this game.
But the other thing to remember is the last home games of the season, fans are going to be there, and if Liverpool need a win on the last game of the season to get into the Champions League, and they're at home, that crowd will get them through it, won't it? Because that's what they've been saying all season. The reason that their home form dropped off is because they're missing the fans. Well, fans are back now, and you do think that might push them over the edge. But they still don't really have any quality at centre-back. They're still there to be got at. I fancy Chris Wood, Ashley Barnes, Vidra to upset those centre-backs. That is not the kind of forward you want to play against if you aren't necessarily the most equipped centre-back. They're not pacey, but there's two very different challenges to come up against them at one week and then have Will Zaha running at you the next week. I watched Palace this weekend and I saw two teams play. Crystal Palace and Crystal Palace. They were awful, absolutely awful for the first 25 minutes, and then they woke up. So it depends. You never know who's going to show up. And I do think there might be an air of a few teams going, we would like it to be the ones that really bury Liverpool. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. Maybe it's just me.
Well, I think Liverpool are ripe for that kind of approach, to be knocking them off their stride, because they're not looking particularly slick going forwards at the minute. They're misfiring. They can't get a shot on target. Mane's gone missing. So I think a team like Burnley, first of all, would be well up for that. But Crystal Palace, it might be Roy Hodgson's final game. So there might be something there. There's a few players in the Palace team who contracts are expiring. Benteke looks like a different player lately. He's scoring for fun. So it might be a different result to what people are predicting. I don't think it's a complete shoe-in that Liverpool will win both.
Also, Hodgson didn't have the best time at Liverpool, did he?
There you go. Another narrative there waiting to happen. So, sorry, Dave, what were you going to say?
What you were touching upon earlier, speaking about Liverpool's front three, I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the summer, because you look at Salah and Mane, they're two main men, really. Well, obviously, Mane of late, he's been a little bit off it, but for the first half of the season, he was kind of their go-to man. He was kind of keeping them pushing forward, and they were at the top of the league when he was in that vein. But they're heading to the end of their late 20s, and you think about the market and what teams are prepared to pay now. Are Liverpool going to be stuck with Salah and Mane? Because Real Madrid aren't going to come in and pay 100 million for Salah, and I can't see Barcelona doing it, and I can't to pay PSG. So where's he going to go? He's not going abroad.
Well, that's the same situation as Harry Kane's in as well. He's at that age now where there are players younger than him, like Mbappe, like Haaland, where you could pay very similar fees and get somebody with another sort of 10, 15 years still ahead of them.
I think they're in danger of upsetting some of those front men, because there's talk of them being interested in Jadon Sancho, but who makes way to bring in Jadon Sancho in? Because it's definitely upset the harmony, I think.
Well, that's why I think Myles is probably right. Sadio Mane is probably the one you look at and go, maybe his time's up. Maybe he's had his best years with Liverpool. It's time for him to find somewhere else. But what's his value? 100 mil, 80 to 100 mil, somewhere, something like that.
Because of his age, less.
You think?
60, 70, I think they'd take.
I struggle to see.
I don't know where he'd go.
Yeah,
No.
I think we could see the market actually come back down a little bit. We obviously saw PSG massively inflate it, but it is now at a point where supply and demand, that's how you develop a value of anything in the world. And if all of a sudden your big, heavy spenders in football can't afford it, you're essentially saying, PSG or Man City, come and buy our player. If you can't, we're stuck with them. And you don't want to end up in a situation like Arsenal have had with players like Ozil on massive wages that you then can't shift, and you end up getting no transfer fee from. In fact, you pay them to leave. Clubs won't be able to afford to do that. It's not sustainable. So I don't think Mane and Salah are the kind of assets that Liverpool are like, oh, let's get rid of them. We're desperate to get rid of them. They're still world-class players on their day. I mean, whether Salah is or not, I still dispute. But still, they're not going to be looking at them like dead weight. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw slightly lower fees for players than expected. Jadon Sancho, even. There's talk of United being interested in him again. Well, last summer, Dortmund was saying, 100 mil, 110 mil, United wouldn't do it. Yeah. Now I'm reading 75.
Yeah.
Is that a sign of the times?
I think so. But I also think that you were talking about players' fees coming down. I think players' wages are going to have to be realigned as well. Because if these players want to get out of the clubs they're in and face a new opportunity, a new challenge, they're going to have to take a pay cut, because there's not many teams going to be able to pay sort of 400, 500k a week. That's silly money. And we knew it always was. And it's never going to be sustainable to keep people transferring between these mega clubs and still keep meeting those demands, because football's changed massively. Football isn't as lucrative as it once was at the moment. It might well bounce back. You know, we might well see a boom in TV revenue again, where clubs are being paid so many hundreds of millions a year just for broadcast rights, and it keeps the money flowing through the game for teams like Liverpool to pay Mane massive wages, and for Real Madrid to suddenly start dominating the market with Galactico signings again. I can't see it in the next decade. Maybe I think it's going to be a quiet decade for transfers. There might be a couple of massive spectacular ones, but is there going to be anything north of 200 million like we saw with Neymar? Probably not. I think that's probably the end of that skewed the market so much at the time. But yeah, maybe some leveling out, which is what the game needs at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, massively.
I'm going to take this opportunity to plug our socials. So if you want to carry on the conversation, we are the Football Diary UK on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So feel free to follow us on there. And also, we've got a Discord server, which would be great to be part of. So there's a link just there if you want to carry on chatting to us off air as well. Last thing before we go on, unless you've got anything else other to talk about, but I just wanted to ask you your guys' thoughts about Aymeric Laporte changing his allegiances from France to Spain. Now, he's one of the best central defenders in the Premier League, arguably one of the top in Europe at the moment. So why are France ignoring him, first of all? And is this something a player could, should do at his level, to switch allegiances like that? I know he's got a lot of background in his roots and his heritage with Spain. But I mean, what sort of statement does this say about the Spanish national team and the French national team, and also Laporte as a player? Myles, I'll start with you. What's your opinion on that?
I think the wealth of talent that France have, particularly in that position and across the back line, to be fair, like even the quality of their left backs is outstanding. But if you think about who comes ahead of him in selection for centre back at France, then I can see why he'd want to change. He would probably bank on himself and trust himself to be better than some of those players. But you've seen what selection is like for France. If you're in with that crowd, you're in.
Yeah.
That's why Giroud does as many caps as he does. That's why players like Benzema, when everything happened, it was really easy to push him aside. And you look at some of the centre-backs that France have. They still have the likes of Umtiti and Langley at Barca. Then you have Upamecano coming through. Kurt Zouma's playing more regularly for Chelsea and coming through. Konate is coming through. Fofana at Leicester, you never know where he might end up as well. Even Saliba is French. So
and
they've
Koundé
got...
at Sevilla as well.
You what, sorry?
Jules Koundé at Sevilla as well.
The Hernandez brothers as well. One of them being at Bayern. Like, you have so much talent there that if you identify that the Spanish national team are about to lose Sergio Ramos at some point and maybe could do with that strength, and you do have a connection with them, why not? It's not the first time we've seen it done at that sort of level. Diego Costa went and played for Spain, didn't he, when they needed a striker and he was available because he wasn't playing for Brazil. Grealish changed his allegiance at one point. Declan Rice did it in England. We looked at getting Leon Bailey to come over. Zaha's gone the other way. It happens a lot. So if you really want to play and you're proud of various parts of your heritage, then why not? I think there are so many people in modern society that don't just put themselves in one box and say, I am English, therefore I would only play for England. You're going to be proud about every single aspect of your makeup. And if part of your growing up and your allegiance is with Spain, why not go and play for them? I think it'll be really good. And Laporte is a fantastic centre-back. He's missing out on first-team football at Man City. Does he really want to miss out on an international career as well? No, I think it's a good move for all involved. I think France aren't going to mind. They've got their favourites. Spain are benefiting from getting a wonderful player on board and a good ball-playing centre-back as well, which Spain really love. And he's going to play for a top national team. So, yeah, I've got no problem with it. I've
got to say, I admire the balls of him just to kind of go, you're ignoring me long enough, Deschamps. I know I'm good enough to play at international level, and he clearly is. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pledge allegiance to the Spanish national team. You know, they've probably been courting him anyway because they need a player of his caliber in that position, which is fair enough.
It says a lot that I just listed all the players that are ahead of him in the France team, and I forgot Raphael Varane, who's probably the best centre back in the world.
Blimey.
Kimpembe, forgot about him too. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. The embarrassment of riches at centre back is crazy. They're so stacked at centre back.
But we had a lot of right backs.
Yeah, it's a bit like the English situation, isn't it, in that position? But I can't remember a situation where players switched allegiance this high profile. You talk about Diego Costa, but I mean, Spain were at that point not really playing with a number 9. They were kind of playing the false 9 like Man City are at the minute. So it wasn't a massive deal. But to switch from one European superpower to another, I think it's a really bold move. I really do. And fair play to him. I don't blame him. And I think Pep Guardiola's probably had some influence on that because he knows his players good enough to play at international level. And I think the constant snubs from Deschamps and the French national team must be affecting his confidence as well because he's a confidence player. So maybe there's been a word in his ear there too. Dave, would you pick Laporte ahead of any of the Deschamps favourites at centre-back, any of the many we've just listed there? Or do you think he's going to struggle to even get into the squad?
No, I think arguably, yeah, he should be in the squad. It's something that's been discussed for a number of years now, and a lot of French supporters aren't actually that fond of Deschamps. Deschamps had a lot of issues with a few players, Martial being one of them. Yeah. Martial being a strange one as well, was because he's been in the squad at times, I think, this year, but he's been dreadful this year. Whereas last year, he was absolutely brilliant. You know, he's arguably probably our best striker. And there was talk of him being the leading striker for United. He still couldn't get in the squad, but now he's put him in this year, and he's been absolutely dreadful. Some decisions are a bit odd with Deschamps, and it has kind of shown up a few times over the last couple of years. And obviously, there's the final that we got to against Portugal a few years ago, and obviously that nightmare that they had. There was a lot of talk for him to be sacked from that position, but they've kept him in there, and fair play. They've gone and won a trophy from the back of that. But some of the performances, they should be performing better with the personnel they've got in that team, no doubt.
I think there's been talk of. Go on, then.
Got a lot. Dave, what do you think of Leicester's owners? The thing with the Glazers is, Dave, what do you think about Chelsea right now? Timo Werner reminds me of Marcus Rashford. Dave, do you think Laporte should get in the France squad? Well, Anthony Martial. Who you support, Dave?
I think he makes his point well. I think he makes his point.
Really
everything links back to United in some way, shape, or form.
Within 5 seconds, whatever question you've asked Dave, it's almost like Graham Souness and Pogba. Like, well, I've got to find a way of slating someone at United right now. I love it.
No, I think that's unfair.
Likening it to a situation, I think it is very similar to.
No, you are right.
He's suffered in that French team, and he's not performed brilliantly, but Deschamps is a bit of a enigma of a manager, I feel.
Yeah, he's a strange one because I think England have been placed as favourites for Euro 2020, whereas you look at the France squad and how stacked they are, not just at centre back, but in most positions, and the majority of them, if they were English, would walk into our squad, So I don't know why the bookies think England are ahead of France in any way she'll perform, but for me, they're still the number 1 team in the world. I don't know about you guys, but France are favourites for the Euros. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Is that who you think will win it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I did like an online thing where you can chart people's progress to the final. I think it ended up being England, France in the final or something like that, or the semis maybe something. I can't remember which side of the draw they were both on.
Portugal, I think Portugal have got a strong team.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Again, better than England. So it depends what coaches are at the head of the team. And at the minute, they've both got fantastic squads, yet they've got Gareth Southgate at the head of England and Didier Deschamps at the head of France. And they're just not very good coaches. They're really not. I'd hate to say it.
This man's slagging off Gareth Southgate.
I think there are. Come on. The thing is, though, you got that wealth of, them players now in England. It's going to be. I think we're probably a couple of really good midfielders short, maybe of being a brilliant team of the makings of a potentially really good team. And I think it's going to get to a point where the players are going to be there. Have we got the coach who can actually get this team to win? And there will be question marks around Southgate.
Yeah, of course.
National treasure, Gareth Southgate. Come on, lads.
I mean, he's a lovely guy. He's an FA sort of man, isn't he? He's an FA yes man. But is he going to leave the England Post and walk into Man City? Is he going to replace Zidane at Real Madrid?
It's a different game. club management and international management, completely different game.
So you're basically saying that after England, Gareth Southgate is finished as a manager?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow,
I don't think he'll want anything else. No, I agree. I honestly think that because he's had his time in club football and he didn't want to go back. After the World Cup, there was talk of him getting the United job. He didn't want it. He's happy where he is. I don't think he'll. I think he'll go and work with the FA. I think he'll stay after the England job.
I think you're right.
He ain't going to go back.
No, I think day-to-day club football. He's had a bad taste of it as well at Middlesbrough. Long time ago now, mind you. But
yeah, exactly.
It wasn't a good experience for him, was it? So maybe not.
He'll stay at England. But do you think France are going to win it then? Is that who you're saying?
I think so, yeah. I'm going to say that now publicly. I think France are the favourites for me. Why? Are you disagreeing?
Who do you think, Dave?
I'm going to go for Portugal.
Yeah. We're going to get up. I want to say England. I don't think it'll be England. I don't know if we're going to have any centre-backs at this rate.
Defence will let us down again. I think it'll be centre-back.
Yeah, me too. I'm going Italy. Got to stick with them.
Okay.
They got a good squad, man. I think they'll do all right.
A squad that's not really talked about in the same breath as France, England, Portugal, though. That's the thing. That's probably why they might be a dark horse for the tournament.
Yeah,
I hate that term.
So.
But yeah, probably will surprise a few people. You never know.
They've got a good manager as well. Mancini's a good manager.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's had a bad rep in the press as well for his time in England, but he's got qualities that I think are suited to international football, definitely.
Yeah, it's helped them there.
The Euros is an exciting one to come, actually, isn't it?
Can't wait.
I think this pod's going to have to be done 3 times a week to keep up with the amount of football we'll see during that time, to be honest. Anyway, guys, that's enough for today, but thanks for your time. We'll be back again next week, no doubt, with more amazing Premier League action from dead rubber ties from mid-table teams, but we'll see. But, until then, thanks a lot for your time, guys, and we'll speak soon. Cheers.